with all that in mind, let's bring in our guy, the former defensive lineman, straight out from Maine to Arizona State, a New Year's Eve baby, the 9th overall draft pick in the 1979 draft. He didn't want to be a Bear, but he's now happy that he was. Good old number 90, Al Harris, is with us. Al, good to see you.
Gentlemen, good to see you, Mark and Greg. Thank you for having me on.
Well, and we have you on for a zillion reasons because your football thoughts are top of the mountain and they're just fantastic. And somebody's got to figure out how to get this run game going here, Al, and I know you've got a lot of thoughts on it. So, look, the Colts can't stop the run. The Bears haven't been able to establish the run. If Shane Waldron, after his press conference today, was watching the CHGO Bears podcast, which I believe he loves deeply, what would be your number one recommendation? Hey, Shane, I know you got to do this. I know it will help the Bears win. I did play the game. This is what I think you should do.
Well, first of all, I do have a lot of respect for those coaches. I know they put in a lot of hours and time and everything, and they're trying to do their best to, bring out a good plan for offense. I think one of the things is this is a copycat league, and if you look at the teams that have been successful this year, even in the passing game, they run the ball a lot. And there's a purpose to running the football, because I'm just saying this as a defender. If I'm going against a team like how the Bears were in gun most of the day, I'd love that as a defensive end because I have no other key other than rush the passer. So it's really a disadvantage for the offensive lineman to consistently be in the gun formation with no threat of the run, because it's just a matter of time. I mean, any defensive end worth his salt is going to beat the best offensive lineman eventually. You get that many shots at him, you're going to be, I know some people got on Darnell, right, because he got schooled on that one play. But heck, he's going against one of the best rushers in the league. That's going to happen. And so what happens is, as a defensive player, one thing I hated as a defensive end is if the offensive line got off the ball and were coming at me. And because I was a smaller, quicker, agile guy, and I was going against those big guys, so I would have to kind of jam up against them. Well, what happens is when you're leaning on the defensive ends and the linebackers, and you're pressing them and you're coming off the ball and you're striking instead of catching, what happens to the defender is his legs get tired. So when his legs get tired, what happens to the pass rush? The pass rush dies down. So one of the things is what I've seen, he's had a lot of open formations and things like that. That line is not good enough to do that on a consistent basis. And they just gotta be honest with that. So they need to, my opinion is they need to bring it in tight, bring the line, the tight ends run a lot of 12 and 13 personnel, 21 personnel, 22 personnel. I'm not saying that you don't get in the gun from time to time, but don't live on it because it makes it too easy for the defense. It makes it too hard for the offensive lineman. And so I'm sure there's been other people who have commented about the same thing. And I'm just hoping I'm hoping the defensive coaches talk to the offensive coaches and say, hey, this is too easy to read. You got to bring some tight ends, and I mean bring them up tight, like, right next to the tackle, right next to each other, and put body on body and come off the ball. When I was watching them against Houston, they were catching. They were kind of waiting. Even in the run game, they were catching, and those guys were just exploding into their chest. You got to come off the ball. And I'm used to playing with, against Jimbo Covert, Mark Bortz, Thayer, and all those guys. Those guys came off the rock, and they don't weigh nearly as much as these guys. And they came off and they were striking people. And you gotta establish a line of scrimmage. You gotta strike and get some movement so the back has some options when he's sitting in there.
Yeah, it definitely feels like this is just this next game and these next three games with all three defenses that they're playing, Colts, Rams, and Panthers, are defenses, worst run defenses in the league. So it feels like it's just what the doctor ordered. But when you look at the best quarterbacks in the league, they're playing out of gun more times than not. So my question to you is the balance of trying to develop Caleb Williams into one of these new era quarterbacks versus doing what's best for the team right now and what the game plan should call for against a defense that, obviously is giving up a lot in the run. How do you balance that as a coach to do what's best for the team versus trying to develop a quarterback into what we're seeing around the league?
Well, the first thing I think about developing a quarterback is keeping his confidence. Because, if you looked at that game, that was instant replay of Cleveland game a couple of years ago against Justin. It was. They were getting annihilated. And they had to spread out just like that, 5 guys blocking them. They were getting killed. I mean, the center was getting thrown back in a quarterback's lap on a regular basis. It's great to have that if you have guys that can do that. But if you have guys that don't do that and you're still trying to develop a guy, how's that going to help him be a better quarterback if he's getting hit all the time? And you saw the difference in Caleb in the second half, right? Caleb was not the same person in the first half. First half, he was on cue, pop, pop, pop. And I mean, they had some quick throws, even when they were coming after him. I don't know what happened to the routes in the second half, and I heard that they had a lot of confusion on that. Maybe that was a big part of it. But if you want to develop the quarterback, the first thing you got to do is keep him from getting killed.
Yep.
That'll kill. I don't care who the quarterback is. I don't care if it's Manning. I've seen Tom Brady. When people pressured him up the middle, he was an ordinary quarterback, and he was the greatest of all time. So you got to get protection first up the middle, because if you can't step up the throw, what do you got? Because most of the offensive tackles, they're schooled to, if a defensive end like me, if I'm rushing up, they'll try to let me go outside and then push me out of the way, and then the quarterback steps up and makes the throw. But if your inside 3 aren't holding a point, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yep.
How are you going to develop a quarterback when he's getting killed? So to me, I would rather run the football more, give him some nice play action that makes it pretty easy, because guys are coming up to play. Because I played linebacker too, and I know if a team's running, I'm looking to run, and my first step's forward. And if they're play action, I got to honor the play action because they've been running on me. Now all of a sudden a receiver or running back's getting behind me. Now I got to try to find them. So I think if you can get some play action passes in there, establish the run. And what I mean by establish the run is be committed to it. They're going to stop it at times, but don't give up just because, you got stopped a couple times.
So let's take a little global look at this, Al, because if you look at passing touchdowns through 2 weeks, this is kind of making its way around, and people are trying to figure out why. From 2020 to 24, first 2 weeks, passing touchdowns, 110 in 20, 110 in 21, 105 in 22, 86 last year, and now 66 2024. So this is this is a league-wide movement going on right now.
It's the fewest since 2006.
And the fewest since 2006. Thank you, Gregory. Love that research right there, brother.
Look at us.
We're brilliant, and that's why people love the show. And Al, you're helping us get to the next level. Why do you think that is, and how do you capitalize on what's going on right now?
Well, I think one of the things that in the modern day coaching realm that they're not doing that they used to do is they're not playing quarterbacks in the preseason. I think that's a big mistake. If you watch Aaron Rodgers the last 3 years, would you say Aaron Rodgers one of the greatest quarterbacks ever? Do you know the last 3 years?
But yes,
he didn't hardly play in the preseason. And what happened his first game? He stunk up the joint. But after the first game, he was Aaron Rodgers again. And so you have to play these guys in the preseason. I know they're like, well, we don't want them to get hurt and this and that, but you need a rhythm and the timing. And I think what's happening is I think that's why you're seeing such a slow start, because all these guys are like, yeah, don't play any of your starters. And then all of a sudden you get in the game, it's a total different speed. What I've learned when I played was there's a preseason speed, a regular season speed, and a postseason speed. And that's true. There's 3 different speeds on that field. And so you have to get used to that. And I'm just talking about, you don't have to play a guy. I mean, when we played, I think we had 4 preseason games. Our first game we played, maybe 3 series, 2 or 3 series. We got through the first quarter. Second game, we might play almost up to halftime. Third game, we would play into the third quarter first series. I'm talking about both sides of football. That's in the third game, okay? Now, these guys don't play at all.
Right.
So how are you going to expect them to come out in a regular season and have their timing down?
Well, what Carolina did with Bryce Young, and Mel Kiper made the point of, like, shout him out because the dude struggled his whole first year, didn't play in any of the preseason this year, with the exception of one series. New head coach, new system, the whole thing. Throw him out there 2 weeks, you're done. See you later. I mean, that is a travesty right there.
Well, you bring up. Go ahead, Al.
Go ahead. No, it's okay.
No, he brought up Mel Kiper, and there's a video making the rounds from this morning on Get Up where he says that the NFL should ban too high safeties, and that the league can't stop the too high safety anymore. And the passing touchdowns few since 2006, average target depth 7.1 yards, lowest on record. If only 545 blitzes, fewest on record, and then the 46% too high safety percentage is the highest on record in NFL history, and no one can stop it. And now all these teams are just check down Charlies, and Mel's solution is to ban it. What is your solution to the beating the too high safety that's dominating the league?
It's called running the football. First of all, when you have guys back, you don't have guys up there, it's an advantage for the offensive line, especially if you have two tight ends in there, because you can get a push off. The back has a lot more room to cut. That's the answer. What's happened was the teams got a wave, because of Patrick Mahomes, everybody wanted to throw the ball, right? Oh, we want to get this great thrower, rocket thrower. Well, even with Tom Brady, they ran the football a lot. With Joe Montana, you know who they had back then? Roger Craig, Wendell Tyler. Those guys ran the football. They had 1,000-yard rushers on their football. The key to great passing is running the football. The reason is, I don't care what defense you're in. If you're in too high or, have extra guys back there, if someone's running the ball down your throat, what are you going to do? You're going to bring that safety in. And when that safety comes in, that's when you have the big play. You have to be committed to running the football. Look at New Orleans. New Orleans is averaging 40 a game, right? What are they doing? They're running the football. They annihilated Dallas, killed them. That's what Green Bay did to Dallas. Remember that?
Yep.
I mean, look at Green Bay, what they did this past week. Everybody thought, oh, they ain't got a chance with the backup quarterback, right? He really struggled with Tennessee. What did they do? They ran for 268 yards? You're trying to win a football game. You're not trying to look pretty.
Yeah, you nailed it. Mina Kimes put out earlier, the two offenses with the highest run rate in these looks of the too high safety are the Cardinals, and you nailed it, the Saints. And they're the two most successful offenses in the league right now.
Before we get to the defense, Al, as far as just the run game's going, do we have the right running back? Is DeAndre Swift the guy? I mean, he's saying today that, quote, he can be better, which is a great teammate right there. He's not throwing anyone under the bus. But I'm also looking at him, and he's not exactly going to run through a ton of contact here. That's not his game. So I'm wondering, do we have the right back? And if you're going to do a two-headed monster here, who's Al Harris's second back to pair with him?
Mine? Honestly, a lot of people go, what? But, I mean, as much as I like Khalil Herbert, and he's a good runner, I like Velus. And this is why I'm saying I'm looking at this as a person that has to play against him. I'd be more afraid of Velus than any of those backs. Because not only does he run hard, you notice every time he got hit, he was always getting yards, even after he got hit. Yep. And the guy has very good vision. I think he's more of a way more natural runner than he is a receiver. Now, I don't know how he is in pass protection. I don't know how he is in assignments. He might not, who knows on that end. I can't evaluate that. But if you're saying a pure runner who would scare me more than anyone on that team, would be him. But I do think I've seen, oh my gosh, I just had a brain fart on the starting running back's name.
DeAndre Swift.
DeAndre Swift. I have seen him run inside, but he gets tackled pretty easy. He's not a strong guy. He doesn't get those tough yards. So, when they get in that 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, they need someone that can do that. Now, I'm going to throw up another person in the running game they need to use. Caleb. Caleb. Caleb is a very good runner. And what I'm saying, not in a regular, I'm not saying run him like 10, 12 times. I'm not talking about that. Just enough to keep him honest. I would use him in the red zone. He's very, very good. He has running back skills. He really does. But I wouldn't do a regular diet of him, but I would, just to keep the defense, make him, what you want to do as a defender, you want to keep my eyes looking at everyone. You don't want me to just look at one person. You want me looking at the running back. You want me looking at the tight end. You want me looking at the quarterback. I got to defend all of them. But I would love to see them, and I know Caleb's trying to do what the coach wants him to do, but he made a lot of really good plays running the ball. And so I'm not trying to talk to him like running like Justin did, but I would just like to see him do, especially in the red zone, just to keep the defense honest, to make the defense maybe have a spy to make it easier for him to throw. But as far as a runner, I would like to see them get a guy in there. I don't know what's happening with Roschon Johnson. He seemed to be the best back for the short yardage stuff, but I don't know what's happening with him. But I think the thing is, regardless of who the running back is, you got to get a push off the line. I mean, they're catching people. Like I was watching them against Houston. They weren't coming off the ball. They were catching guys, catching them in their chest. You got to come off the football and get some movement. They got to give them some plays that the lineman can come off the ball, because that's going to keep the defenders more honest.
Yep. No, you're right, because when you're running RPO, and I don't have to tell you, but when you're running RPO, you're setting up for the run or the pass. So, you get under center and you run downhill. Those are cliche football terms, but at the end of the day, like you said, then the offensive linemen are able to fire off. There's no question of whether or not they're running or passing, and there's that in between as the collision happens with the defensive lineman. You can just go. And a couple times they got under center last week, even with DeAndre Swift, they were able to get positive yardage, 8 yards on a carry, up the middle. So
early in the game, what you're talking about, Greg, is true. They did come off early in the game. And there was one play in particular, like I don't know if it was in the second quarter or end of the first quarter, they came off and fired off the ball, and Sweat hit right in there and got some good yardage. I just think when you are establishing the line of scrimmage, and see, the other thing you have to realize with offensive linemen is when they get movement, it gives them confidence, and they get a little swag, you know what I mean? When they're pushing you. And then the defenders are kind of like, oh, shoot. I mean, I remember even playing with the Bears when we had those really good defenses. There were times that teams ran really well against us. Like the Rams ran well against us at times. Redskins ran well against us at times. And I remember we would be in the huddle, and the coach would, they would stop running that play that was giving us a problem. And we kind of go, man, I'm glad they stopped running that play. That happens sometimes, because sometimes a matchup is there that a certain play works well, and the coaches get too cute and they get away from it instead of going back to it and make them stop it. You see the really good coaches, they might do it in different formations, different personnels, but they run the same play a lot. And people don't realize it because it looks, wow, look at the innovation and stuff. And then it ends up being the same play. So if a team can't stop it, why do you stop and running it?
Right. Well, one thing that can't be stopped on this Bears team is this defense. Over their last 8 games, the Chicago Bears have allowed 20 or fewer points, which is the longest streak in the NFL right now. They're playing some dominant football. And so just to turn it to the other side of the ball, side that you played on, what are you seeing from this defense that's making them so dominant? How surprised are you, or are you surprised at how well the pass rush has looked here these first 2 weeks?
Well, let's take it on the defensive side like it did on the offensive side. It starts at the line of scrimmage. You've noticed that teams have had a very hard time running against the Bears. They have been stopping people up, especially in that middle. I think when you got the 2 behemoths that we got inside now, it's very hard to run on us. And the backers, they have another year, and they got a lot more experience as far as filling the holes, and they got their whole team back. They're playing with a lot of swag, And I think it starts with the line of scrimmage. Their defensive line, the reason why they've been able to have really good pass rush in the second half, the pass rush gets better in the second half. Do you notice that?
Yep.
Why? Is because they stop the run. So now, once they stopped the run, I mean, think about that running back. He had, what, 160 something against the Colts the week before? And the Bears pretty much bottled him up. And so they're showing physicality on the defensive side of the football. And I think that's one of the first things is you got to show your physicality. And this is the thing for the offense to remember for this week. You don't have to be in a hurry to score because your defense is going to keep you in every game. You know, this is not like Caleb doesn't have like USC's defense when he had to score 40 a game and act crazy and try to throw and do incredible things. They're going to be in the game. Think about it. If Kyler Gordon somehow comes up with that tip, the Bears win that game, right? As badly as the offense played, if he somehow comes up with that ball, the Bears would win that game. So that tells me
he should have. He jumped the route. He was right there. He was gone.
Yeah, and so that tells me the Bears have a lot better football team than people think of. Because realize that was Houston at home, their first game, and they pretty much throttled C.J. Stroud and them in the second half. That's a heck of an offense now. That I mean, all those receivers, all the weapons they have, and the Bears throttled them with no help from the offense at all. If they had any help, they would have won that game. So what that tells me is this is a very, very good Bears football team. And they just have to help the offensive line, and they have to have a physical mentality on that side of the football. But I love the way the defense is playing. I think Taylor picking up Taylor as a pass rusher was a revelation for us because what I noticed, they were not sending guys out that would probably normally be in a pass rush because they were trying to chip Taylor and stuff because he had such a good game the first game against Tennessee. So when you have an extra pass rush, and you got two pass rushers coming from the outside and you're getting that good pressure on the inside, and you have those defensive backs who are playing exceptionally well. The defensive back, I love the way they're playing. They tackle well, you know, and I love their tackling because that's one of the biggest thing I think is a difference in their defenses is their tackling because it's the NFL. Somebody's going to catch a ball on you, but how the offenses get more yards is when they get guys that miss tackles. And the Chicago Bears, they haven't been missing too many tackles. They've been nailing guys and making big plays, and they're playing with such a confidence right now. You could just, it's just a swag. You know, you could just see it. They believe in it, and Lord's will, hopefully everybody stays healthy. But that's to me, that's a championship type defense right now we got.
100%.
Big handsome man on the screen here that you're looking at, not to my left, but on the screen is number 90, Al Harris. Who look at that mustache back in the day over the right shoulder.
Oh goodness.
Might have to bring that back, Al. I don't know. That
that thing would be all patchy, gray. It would look all bad. You know, it's funny looking at some of the styles we had back in those days. I was like, oh my goodness.
It reminds me of those days you guys would go on those basketball tours in the summer and go play at high schools. You have any good stories from any of those days? Because I remember going to quite a few of those.
Oh man. Yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. And we used to do it with the Bulls too. We would have a mixed team. And so one time we had Craig Hodges on our team. And that was right when Craig Hodges was, you know, he was like the 3-point champion or whatever. We were playing, and usually we would play against the teachers, the firemen, or policemen. Usually it was, you know, and we go in these little tiny small towns. Craig Hodges, we would run about half court and we would just stop. And he would launch and hit like about 9 or 10 threes, you know. And when you're sitting there watching him, you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But it was a lot of fun playing those games, you know, interacting with the community. We would do a lot of autographs at halftime, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I got memories of the whole thing. We don't have enough time to go into it, but then we can table that one for another one. Hey, 1 minute to go here, Al. I just want you called up front in the middle behemoths. So I'm just wondering, do you see a different Gervon Dexter Sr. that is built to last in year 2 here?
You know, I'm seeing him play more confidently, and that's a big key to me is that you could see he's, you know, I think after playing that read and react defense, that takes time to get that out of your system, you know, and I think he's finally seeing, you know, the aggressiveness getting across the ball, that his big body, he's a big, long athlete, super strong, fast. I'd love to see him kind of gear down a little bit because he misses sacks sometimes because he'll run right by the guy because he's running right at him. I'd like to see him kind of sink his hips a little bit so he can get some more sacks. But I think, when you get someone playing like he's starting to play and you got all that mass in the middle and you can stop the run, that just makes a team one-dimensional. It's a lot easier to defend a one-dimensional team.
Interesting. All right. Hey, Al, let's do this again soon, all right?
All right, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Mark and Greg. We greatly appreciate it.
Yep, pleasure talking with you.
Great to have you on, Big Al.
All right, fellas.
Talk soon.
All right, thanks.
Number 90. Number 9 overall draft pick, 1979, baby.
We all silly like the mayor.